So now we're gonna get into some sketches. I like to use just a Stabilo pencil or a charcoal pencil, or even some acrylic ink with like a skewer or something like that. I like to keep it simple when it comes to practicing my sketches. I don't want to get into this like big crazy, these supplies and stuff like that, because this is just about practice. It's not about making something that's necessarily a completed or a finished piece. So I'm just going to kind of show you the differences between these I guess you could call them mediums, the Stabilo and the charcoal, because there is a difference, a big difference. What I like to do is I like to find reference photos on, say, Pinterest or the internet, I guess. Pinterest is my favorite place because I can save them to a one of my boards, so that way I can always go back to them. So this is a magnolia, and honestly it might be a paper magnolia. It kind of looks too like perfect, right? But the big thing that I do is I try to look at the lines of, especially when it comes to flowers, the lines in the petals. So those are the things that I follow. There are obviously, different shapes and stuff like that, but I feel like if you just look at your picture and just follow the lines and try to put the things where they are in the picture. For example, I made that middle part first, so that way my petals can come off of that middle part in the same way that they do in the photo. And then you can go back and add those detail lines if you want, those little subtle details of the petals if you want to, but you don't have to, because this is all about practice, right? So it's about just, I hope that makes sense, just to follow the lines and to look at where things are and where they should go, and it all kind of comes together. I know when I first started, getting interested in drawing flowers, I didn't want to look at a reference photo, because even though like all of the artists that I was following said, it's so much easier when you look at a reference photo, I was like, I don't get it. I don't like it. I just want to be able to, draw off the cuff and stuff like that. But now that I've gotten more practice and now I understand the need to have a picture to look at, because you don't know, you have this idea in your head of what a flower looks like, but you don't know how the lines are, and something that you can make up is going to be totally different than something if you were to look at a picture. Now, after you practice for a while and get better at it, you could totally make it up off the top of your head, because you've seen tons of pictures and you've drawn it over and over. So it's almost like second nature. But until then, I feel like it's a really good idea to look at a photo. I still do this all the time. Or if you have even better flowers that you buy or flowers that are in your garden, those are really good things to look at too, because then they're not as maybe made up, not made up, like perfect, as a photo would be, if that makes sense. most of you probably know this, but a Stabilo pencil is water soluble, so it's activated with water. So I'm just taking a little pencil and putting some water all around, activating some of those lines, and then bringing some of that pencil into the petal, kind of like watercolor, just adding some dimension and shading and stuff like that. I always find it interesting how, you know, the water moves and moves the pencil, and the different kind of effects that you can get, you know, from this one thing, you know. So I'm just kind of showing you how you could do that, and I think the end result looks pretty cool. Alright, so now we're going to move over to the other side, and I'm going to switch to my charcoal pencil. This pencil is a General's Peel and Sketch pencil, so it looks kind of like a China marker, but it's a charcoal pencil. The interesting thing about these is similarly to the Stabilo, they are also water soluble, so you can activate them in the same way as the Stabilo, but I'm going to show you the difference between the two, because it is, you know, a pretty actually significant difference. So again, I'm doing the same thing. I'm looking at this picture. I'm not trying to be perfect or anything, but I'm just following the lines again. So I'm looking at each petal and, you know, seeing where it begins in relation to, you know, maybe the middle part of the flower, and then those different little detail lines. For example, that bottom petal, you know, is kind of folded a little bit, so following that line, and it may look weird while you're doing it, but I promise that it will come out looking like it should. So you may be following the lines and going, this looks wonky, but once you finish it, I promise it's gonna look cool. And even if you don't think so right away, if you leave it and come back, you'll look at it and be like, oh, hey, that actually looks like a flower, and that looks pretty neat. So I'm just doing the same thing again with activating the charcoal. You'll see that it is not as dark as the Stabilo. So the Stabilo is like super black and makes these really dark lines, which is very cool. But the charcoal is not as dark. It doesn't make the lines as dark, and then the water, when you use it, has like these more subtle tones. So to me, I personally enjoy the charcoal a little bit better because I like the subtlety of it. So next I'm going to use this black acrylic ink. This particular one is from Liquitex. I also have one laying around that's from Amsterdam acrylic ink. Any ink will do. A lot of people use Speedball, which I have yet to try because I have this black acrylic ink, so I may as well use that before I get out the Speedball, or try the Speedball, I guess. So this is just a skewer that I have used many times for many different things. I use it to make lines in my gesso. I use it to do all sorts of things. So here I'm dipping it into the ink, and then I'm just kind of almost rolling it to create the flower and the petals and things like that. Now, I'm not being super specific with how I'm drawing these. These are snapdragons. I actually have some in my backyard. So I'm not, going in and drawing all the lines for the petals. Here I'm more giving the idea of the flower. And I think, when you look at it, when it's done, you see that this looks, similar to a snapdragon. It's obviously not perfect, but you can tell kind of what type of flower it is. And that's kind of the point in this practice and experimentation, is to learn how you like to draw flowers. Do you like this ink process with the skewer, or maybe you prefer pencil? For me, this kind of loosens it up a little bit. You have less control than you do, when you have a pencil, because you really can't control the ink, how the ink is going to come off the skewer. You really can't control a whole lot of things. And I think that gives you the ability to be more free with your drawings. And that's something that I enjoy just as much as sketching with a pencil. So now I'm going to do essentially the same thing with this bamboo pen. I had literally just bought this, and I really don't know the proper way to use it, the proper way to, fill it with ink or anything like that. So I'm kind of just using it like a dip pen, like a fountain pen, and just going with it. In the end, I preferred the skewer. I think because, again, that lack of control. I do like the sketchy lines that I got with the bamboo pen, but ultimately I think the skewer, of these two, the skewer was my favorite.